We're changing the equipment up a little bit more. Just wanted to get a new camera, actually get a microphone this time as I'm continuing to try to vlog through the current crisis moment that we are experiencing right now in the entire world at this point. And I think like what is helpful for the particular situation that we're in right now is, while not being delusional in any sort of optimism, combating the strains of doomerism and, again, learned helplessness. I'm going to be speaking a lot from the perspective of someone in the United States of America that is not. We here have had our political organizing muscles atrophied pretty much ever since we were born. After anyone pretty much very late 80s, early 90s on in the United States of America, you get told all the time that, hey, we won. We won against uh, communism. And what really happened in the fall of the Soviet Union was the CIA collaborated with elements of the um, Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and in exchange for letting them become kleptocrats that would preside over hundreds of millions, billions of dollars of primarily oil assets, but any sort of public institution in the country, in exchange for um, no longer being a communist threat to the United States. The United States is okay with living with a violent threat, because what does the United States know? The United States knows violence as the language that it speaks to the world, and occasionally it covers its mailed fist in velvet. But as the empire continues to circle the drain, it's the velvet is kind of starting to just rip and tear off, and even the iron on the mailed fist, the metal is starting to corrode. And I think that's what has been motivating the even more naked than usual U.S. imperialism and invasions and kidnapping of world leaders. Basically, and in the case of Iran, basically arming thugs to masquerade as democratic protesters to overthrow the regime, even though they're just killing people. And they want to the goal of these supposedly democratic protesters is to reinstall the equivalent of the Shah of Iran at this point. So, what do you really expect people to believe that have not been totally captured by the propaganda mill that is U.S. corporate media at this point? You're either on the side of people that are being arrested, that are being killed, that are being starved, that are being deprived of housing and even basic shelter, denied health care, denied the ability to even be able to sell their labor power to somebody else in order to be able to get a couple of crumbs, what we know as having a job. Um, And these struggles are overlapping in every part of the world at this point. We are seeing the struggles become one of the same police that are trained by the Israeli occupation forces conducting a don't let the fake ceasefire confuse you, an ongoing genocide in Gaza. They're also settlers are also displacing thousands of Palestinians in the West Bank, still stealing their land, killing them, firebombing their cars. It's and the ruling class of the world has said basically, okay, we're gonna let you have this one. U.S., Israel, and Western countries that have fully backed this genocide, um, and all other countries basically just stood by and let it happen, except for Yemen and Lebanon and Iran. Uh, and now that violence that has been going on unabated there since even before the Balfour Declaration, so over 100 years. Well, it comes back home. These places, Gaza, Sri Lanka, if you look into that, El Salvador, Honduras, um, Rwanda, these are all incubators. These are all testing grounds for uh, U.S., Israeli, European military and intelligence to be able to gather tactics on uh, counterinsurgency, counter-terror that is ultimately going to be turned against its own people, because what they consider the number one threat to be? They consider the number one threat to be uh, in the United States anti-communism, which is really just against the labor movement, against our class that is forced to sell our labor power in order to maintain an existence, against our class, the proletariat. And they are somehow just trapped in amber, thinking that they're going to be able to just throw in, instead of absolutely just repugnant pustules that are running the government now, they're going to try to throw in the supposedly more professional fascists, aka the Democrats, liberals that have done nothing, fucking nothing to help a single person in this entire nightmare that everybody's been going through. They do nothing, and you see in midterm polling, and I believe some elections are coming up. It is currently February of 2026, and yeah, of course, in the face of what is currently ongoing in the U.S. of just you know uh, stormtrooper 1930s activity, yeah, people are not going to be happy with the current government, and rightly so. And shouts out to people that are learning how to make political demands in real time, engaging in mutual aid, and talking to their neighbors in real time. Uh, it's been a disaster for the administration, not because people are ready to uh, have a revolution yet, but because people are just actually talking to each other again about their circumstances and realizing that this manufactured idea of what the United States is it's some cornball murder crap. It's cornball murder crap. There's nothing redeeming about it. It's just there as a tool to psychologically damage pretty much everybody in the country, but either by instilling false consciousness as a oppressor in the case of usually people that look like me, white dudes, or they just marginalize you to the point of disenfranchisement, like people of um, non-white, female, um, heterodox sexual proclivities and gender identities, non-Christian religion. That whole bullshit archetype that they wanted to try to sell you on of what is a true American. Well, we've seen that those people have always just been, well, in the beginning, they were slave owners. And as technology developed, productive processes under capitalism developed, it matured. Um, we moved from just strictly manufacture into full on factory building, masses of people with basically having through Taylorism and just operational engineering type operations management as well type segmenting and division of labor. We have basically created a society that has all of the pieces to become a landscape of post scarcity production, all needs met for. We have the technology to map out an entirely planned global economy to make sure that everyone has all of their basic needs taken care of. And we have centuries of production data to figure out what exactly those needs are. We're smart enough that we don't need the invisible hand, which is just capitalists appropriating money to tell us how to make things and whose hands to put them in. But they're going to be trying to tell you during this that, they've already tried to guilt trip people who didn't want to vote for Democrats because they were committing genocide and doing absolutely nothing to materially help people, and also explicitly saying in their campaign they're going to deport more people. People are saying this wouldn't have happened if we voted for Democrats. We've just, and the same thing happened with Zoran getting elected. People think that the Democratic Party is actually going to do something for them. What Zoran's election just represented of someone that has liberal talking points of just managing capitalism and reforming the Democratic Party and bringing civility to politics and speaking eloquently. He's just Barack Obama, a decade and a half in the future at this point. America, its electoral system has gone way past its point of it. The only utility that it serves is creating the simulation of a democracy, to have people mime they're feeling like they actually have a say in what happens in a country that exploits them, and has them do their little scantron and saying this is supposedly their most important right, take their little quiz, and then dust their hands off and say that's politics. That's what people in the United States have thought politics have been until like 24, not really until Occupy in 2011 with the Great Recession. And then people started to finally wake up and they were supporting Bernie Sanders, but the Democrats fucked him over in 2016. Did it again with even more support and deliberately got screwed over in 2020 by the Democrats. And Bernie was complicit in rolling over because he could have had people understanding that the Democratic Party is always going to shut down anybody that serves people besides massive corporate donors. Like, at this point, you just need to accept that they're not there for you. They're there for military contractors. They're there for a bureaucracy that stretches across a system of international financial cartels and NGOs and um, collaborationist nation states, both in the global north and the global south, that prop up a system that is designed to make sure that you are always on the back foot, that you are always having to um, put yourself in a situation where you need to be thinking about, if I say something that's quote unquote wrong, if I do something that's quote unquote wrong and outside the confines of what another group of people that happens to have all of the assets known as capital in society, known as the means of production, then you're not really living in a democratic society. You're not living in a free society. You are, and every criticism that you hear about an alternative is very likely just projection from the current oppressive system that you're living under. And it is hardwired into all elements of that system. It's not just ICE, it's not just Donald Trump. The genocide in Palestine was happening under a Democratic administration with the support of who the Democrats just threw up, vomited out as a potential candidate. And now they're trying to make one last gasp to appeal to, they'll call it appealing to people's sense of decency. And they don't care about that. They have helped stoke the flames of and perpetuate uh, proxy conflicts and assassinations and bombings all over the world, just like Republicans. And people are still thinking that just if you get Trump and the cronies out, it's over. No, that is just a particularly disgusting, malevolent manifestation of the beast that we live under. And why do people still not understand that Democrats aren't going to save them? We've had a full year of a just deliberate, killing and annihilation of any sort of, semblance of rights to privacy or civil liberties, any sort of freedom of speech or assembly or expression. It was never there. It's been happening to other groups, and now it's getting elevated because people that like me, people that look like me, like Alex Preddy, are under the guns of not just ICE but all cops. Remember in 2020 with George Floyd, that was Minneapolis PD that killed him. It's not about professionalism. This entire system is designed to make sure that you are kept in enough of a beaten down and falsified state in terms of both getting bribed with goodies, along with getting the stick, stick and carrot, bread and circuses, along with getting the stick. They want you to keep thinking that, yeah, Democrats will save you eventually. All they've done is just created a cool off, like buffering period For as long as I've been alive, they did it for Bush. That's what Obama was. And Obama didn't do anything. He deported more people than George Bush. Again, they happen to be better put together, more sleek, more corporate. But what are they changing? What needs to change is ICE needs to go. It's not about body cameras like Richie Torres is saying, or uh, bringing in Tom Homan for the new ICE director, the guy that who to bring it back to piece of garbage Obama gave the Medal of Freedom for excellence for deporting a bunch of people in 2015. And this guy, Tom Homan, the new director, got caught in an FBI sting operation for accepting a bribe of 50K. Yeah, that's the professionalism that current Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Frey um, believe it, or Fry, some Game of Thrones terminology there, I guess. Mayor Fry, I think it's Jacob Fry. This is what they think is a solution. This is what Democrats believe. It's not going to be Democrats that fix this thing. It's got to go beyond that. This is They are okay with other stuff that the Trump administration has been doing. They were all right with the U.S. Kidnapping Nicolas Maduro. They were all right with the U.S. Letting Syria be overrun and Alawite Christians murdered by U.S. and Israeli-backed foreign fighters. They were all right with not giving Sudan just $9 billion that they were requesting in order to try to end the awful civil war that's been happening there, that's been backed in a proxy conflict with UAE, Iran, Russia, and the US, which I believe only UAE is on the Rapid Support Forces. Kind of both sides there have egregious human rights violations, um, but yeah, it's and apologies that I'm kind of losing my train of thought here and not great ASMR when I'm just using some conjunction words in my stream of consciousness, but it's just time. I'm not saying that we need to eventually get rid of the state and attendance structures, both private and ostensibly public, but really also just corporations with a U.S. government logo slapped on them, because everything's pretty much commodified now. But we need to accept that the Democratic Party is totally compromised and actually complicit in serving as the necessary ventilation valve of people's anger and concerns and disappointments and frustration, so that Republicans will, in a few years' time, once the Democrats fail to do anything adequate, and people will be like, oh, well, we need something new. And then they just go with the worst possible choice again, rather than, other political systems and theories exist that have been applied in human history without leading to more abject suffering, which seems like it's just the American just bread and butter, whether it's suffering within or suffering outside the US. But don't trust the US when it says we got rid of a dictator. I mean, come on. Do you really believe that the US has any sort of care about human rights? They literally said in pressers after kidnapping Nicolas Maduro who the U.S. has been sanctioning for 2 decades, ever since the Chavista movement there, um, aka the Bolivarian Revolution getting reignited there. um it just ended up turning into, no, we're now going to steal this oil tanker, and now we're going to be able to proceed to take all the oil. And fake Nobel Peace Prize winner Maria Corina Machado, who is just so vampiric, and again, she would be a good Democrat. She's a corporate bloodthirsty freak as well. She was willing to sell out her own people to be placed in charge and have that country strip mined. The people turned into like a domestic servant class essentially, and um, all of those drops of oil, it'd be more than a drop. It would be just a flood into the U.S. Because I think Venezuela does have the largest proven reserves in the world. So, and fossil fuels are absolutely critical to undergirding the U.S. dollar, to the maintenance of the U.S. military industrial complex. It is the lubricant that greases the wheels of capitalism, and really also just the fuel to the stoking the fires of industry for it. Uh, More like the fires of just beating us down to a pulp at this point. And that beat down is happening. It's Republicans and Democrats. And anybody that you see that's being propped up as alternatives is, if it's coming from corporate media in particular, and they are calling themselves a Democrat or a Republican and running within those parties, you should automatically disqualify them. If you see somebody in the Democratic or Republican Party, I know this might hurt some people, think, oh, but Bernie's a good guy, or Rashida Tlaib, or Ilhan Omar. AOC used to be, before she said we need to vote for Iron Dome to, because I guess she thinks that Palestinians fighting for their own liberation are considered terrorists. So, that's your progressive, folks. You can't vote for these people into office. These people are behind what the rest of us are about. And we're seeing that. You know how general strikes are getting organized now? It's because we, at the grassroots level, are having to scream at established politicians and labor unions and NGOs and just anybody who is going to be materially impacted by ICE destroying people's lives. All of us had to come together to take those crap institutions like the corrupt labor union AFL CIO, more like AFL CIA, and say it's time to actually be a labor union and go on strike now that people are being murdered openly in the streets. You've been tolerant long enough. You don't have to sit by and let Democrats lie to you and say that they will do anything meaningful about stopping the the horrors that are going on right now. They were kidnapping people during the Black Lives Matter protests. Democrats were. They were shutting down college campuses that were speaking out against the Israeli genocide. So it's inexcusable. Their inaction at this point, their open support for genocide, they are indispensable to genocide at this point. And it's not being pragmatic voting for them of, but the genocide could be even worse. It was actually worse under the Democrats, but we're not. If you're at a point where you're trying to choose between one genocider versus another, you are not in a democratic political system. And you need to wake up and accept that you're not going to be able to express yourself through voting anymore. You're going to need to join a labor union if that feels more appropriate, or you could start a union. There's some good IWW guides for that. You or could read Vladimir Lenin on the efficacy of striking and trade union activity. You could join DSA. You could join the Green Party, but you need to understand that an M&M is chocolate, whether it's got red or blue paint on it. And Democrats are literally doing the exact same things as Republicans. Democrats maintained ICE. Democrats have deported more people. In the case of Obama versus Bush, Democrats deported more people. Bill Clinton deported people. We've got to, it's awful, everything that's going on right now, but Democrats and Republicans got people to this point, and the absolute only way to even start a revolution here, you're not getting it if you think voting for Democrats is a revolution. Getting rid of Trump is, again, the tip of the iceberg of a particularly nasty emanation of uh, U.S. capitalism in a fascist manner, a fascist outlash, and they're going to try to make it more gentle again. And what they don't understand is they're still operating in a paradigm of 10 years ago where the liquidity was still running and we could operate under the delusion that things would get better. The US empire is done. Thank God. And most people, anyone watching in the rest of the world too, most people here are happy about that. Most people here are just tired of the way that this government and the financial, exorbitantly wealthy financial institutions and individuals that they work on behalf of are hell bent on bleeding this world, turning it into a husk. And while they engage in a, I don't know, whatever transhumanist project their sickle brains want to get into, while they're partying on a certain island in the Caribbean with a former late hedge fund manager and trafficker. Not former, late, former trafficker, late, former trafficker, and hedge fund manager, initials JE. Um, this is who runs the world. And at this point, anyone who is on the side of the people that run society from all angles, on the left and the right, remember that Democrats and Republicans are in the Epstein files as well. It is an international cabal of people across all general political, all, I would say, within the confines of their respective national political systems, the ones that are deemed as orthodox political parties, everyone has a general understanding that they need to maintain capitalism at all costs, which is why a world historic genocide was allowed to occur without meaningful international resistance or even basic humanitarian support from the UN to occur, because the international order, they say that they are all about protecting human rights, but clearly it's just been about self-enrichment, and you can annihilate human rights if it ends up enriching the global north, but if you're Idi Amin or if you're the Hutus, then, you know, all of a sudden there's going to be tribunals and retribution. Although in the case of the Rwandan genocide, not a great example on my part there, because 1 million people died in 100 days. And yeah, the U.S., Bill Clinton just stood, watched there too. The U.S. has a habit of just watching. And in the case of, well, the Gazan, the genocide in Gaza of the Palestinians, actively supporting it. In the case of Rwanda, Rwanda is one of the U.S.'s closest allies and partners in Africa. It gives them weapons and funding to fight a proxy war against DR Congo through armed militia groups. So all of the struggles are becoming interconnected, like I said, and those struggles of the side that we are facing off against, it's the entire state apparatus and all of the parties that are a part of it. And I said that this applies on a global scale. Within the context of the United States, that is the corporate backed and funded Republican and Democratic parties. They are screening mechanisms to make sure only selfish, manipulative pieces of human garbage are allowed anywhere near meaningful positions of power. So that needs to go. And we need to organize to overthrow that. And it's going to take a long time. People think that we're right on the edge of revolution. No, no. This is literally just waking up after a 50-year nap, longer at this point. The US hasn't been this politically active in 60 years on this broad of a scale, although ever since Bernie Sanders was a thing, um, people have been picking up again after the uh, false promise of Obama. The afterglow of that election wore off when we realized he was just another corporate stooge. And he's admitted to it. He's proud of being just, I mean, he was basically governing as a Republican. He bailed out the banks. Nobody was meaningfully prosecuted except like one egregious corrupt official. But the thing that I'm just really trying to hammer home is you cannot think that anything remotely close to what has been known as the status quo in neoliberal US politics for the past, I mean, at this point, uh 50 years, that era is done. We're in a new era where they ran out of things that they could commodify. They ran out of things in our future that they could sell and steal in order to make sure that they go off quietly into that good night. Well, they're kicking and screaming, and I'm talking about people that are a little bit older, still in positions of power. They thought they'd be gone before the selfishness of their behavior would actually impact them. Well, it's happening, and they have just decided, looks like you folks are in for a rough ride. Meanwhile, let me just stay on perpetual brunch. Thankfully, not everyone that's old is doing that, but it does seem like people that are tend to be whiter, tend to be older, tend to be more males and females. They just, these people are stuck in a conception of America that never existed, and even the false conception of it is never coming back, like that 1950s like cheesy bullshit. Why do people want that? I want a world where people feel like they can express themselves without getting a bullet in their back, and they want everyone to just be completely repressed, including white dudes in that time who um, felt like they had to be a certain type of person in order to be seen as a respectable family man in white supremacist mid 20th century America. Um, all of those old false values that are emanations of this current state, and only the emanations, the cultural emanations of it, are uh in sort of a fake battle with Democrats. Like, yeah, Republicans are just insane, but Democrats will just be like, can you not want to draw and quarter people that identify as trans? No, it's just like you set up such a cartoonishly bad enemy that you can be a piece of garbage like the Democrats and still get away with it. Lesser evilism is killing millions of people in the US and abroad still. And people are scared because nobody knows how to build their own shit here politically, but we're going to figure this out. But you need to go to DSA meetings or Green Party meetings. You got to break away from the liberal consensus of Republicans and Democrats. And what you also need to do is you need to actually read political theory. You need to read. This is not just, oh, I like this idea and don't like this idea, like you're choosing from a shopping list. Politics is a struggle that requires the mobilization of millions of people on a national level in order to be able to advance interests in a program that actually reflects the interests of not necessarily you as an individual, but what your relationship to the means of production are, which for the vast majority of us is going to be proletarian people, who the proletariat who need to sell our labor power. We used to be able to just have access to to those resources as peasants with our own like little farms, but that got commodified and taken away from us through enclosures and commodification, and farmers just started hiring wage labor, tenant labor instead. And people were robbed of the ability to provide for their own livelihoods, which created the market that drove capitalism. Of rather than people having articles of necessity that would allow them to take care of themselves, they got sold to them by capitalists, even though the workers, were the ones that made those commodities in the first place. They got sold back to them as the people, as a class that made it. And the wages that they got for making that product have to be spent on buying it back. You are living on a gerbil drip feed, and you're the one that's doing all of the work. And it is not just this, you know, untied to material reality rhetoric. It would literally be impossible to make a profit without underpaying and overworking your workforce. Otherwise, it would just be a one-to-one commodity exchange. Someone has the skills to take your machine and your means of production to generate you a commodity, and in exchange, they would give you the value of that commodity that you generated in money. Uh, where would be the room for profit in there? It's not there. The capitalists would have to upcharge on prices after that, which is what people think that they do, but they don't. If they're upcharging and boosting prices even more than the actual production cost to an insane level, that doesn't just cover like, oh, marketing and distribution and overhead and blah blah blah. No, those are all those are baked into the cost of production for most capitalists already. This is a case where they are uh, just charging even more for the purpose of hitting a certain profit margin. And is it tied to any sort of value with the product? No. These people do not care about the actual value that us as people put into commodities that we generate for them. For the absolutely critical maintenance that we provide for society in being able to maintain the global market system that allows the people that are now murdering us openly to maintain their livelihoods. And is that really at this point, is it really worth it to just think that if we just keep our heads down and weather this storm rather than just fully fighting back and trying to take all the things that we know that we deserve in this society, which is everyone having guaranteed food, shelter, utilities, um, at least in initial socialist transitions and revolutions, guaranteed employment if that's needed, although with AI, you want to try to have the least amount of people needing to work as possible. That's how a rational economy is structured. Is it rational that that people are criticizing advances in technology? They did it with automation and now they're doing it with AI because it's taking jobs. We should not be in a position where losing a job is something that causes people to have an existential crisis and a lot of times die over. Why should we should not be wanting to work? That should not be a goal that we have. We have the goal of creating things that we're proud of and being able to create things for ourselves and one another that we need in order to survive. But doing it to make other people money for what? Now they're deliberately halting progress on the level of technological development that we can reach in the applications of technology because we have to have this archaic system that um, we have to keep everyone distracted with a job so that they don't go out and strike in support, so that they don't go out and protest in support of human rights. Um, it is a global struggle where we all need to stick together at this point, and anyone that is not like participating in the general strikes or are, you don't see in the streets protesting, not getting tear gas. All cops and National Guard, yeah, they had the National Guard walking with Minneapolis protesters in a photo op with the fake Black Panthers that exists there for like a few minutes or something. They had to get their photo op in, but we saw out in LA that they've been sticking by ICE out there. The military was called out there. This entire chintzy faux patriotic crap of we need to pay deference to the orchestrators of both global oppression and our own uh, oppression and murder, which has been happening for since the beginning in America for any non-white person, but is now, just being disgustingly paraded on corporate media as righteous at this point. We're in an era where they have run out of real estate on being able to keep the nice face on because the economy's crap. They can't bribe people anymore. People are just more informed about the disgusting crimes that the US commits all over the world. The veil is lifted. Like I said, the mailed fist has corroded and the velvet's gone. So we're going to keep pushing here too because that's the least that we can do to try to begin to make up to the rest of the world the just misery that this place has wrought on it. But I really hope that we push through and we can build something special here if we do something right with this current political moment that we're in. But just remember, don't don't fall for going back into the trap of we're not ready for a third party yet. No, it doesn't even matter if you're ready now. The reality of the situation is you have been sold out by the Democrats, and you either build something new and try to figure out how to do that as quickly as we can. And we have the literature and political theory to at least get the ball rolling with regards to Marxism, Leninism, which I'm happy to go over more if people are interested. But for right now, you just need to know that you should not vote Democrat. It goes without saying, you're a mad dog if you're just voting for a Republican, and you're probably going to need to be forced onto medical and re-education regimen or something. But you should, at the very least, to begin your political transformation into meaningfully overcoming the forces arrayed against us, you should be joining DSA as a dues paying member and looking to meet with a comrade or trying to head to a meeting or at least a Zoom webinar that they have soon too, because in addition to flexing those long atrophied political organizing muscles, it could just be generally educational regarding elements of political history and political theory and economic theory as well. So thank you for listening. The hopefully the actual mic that I'm using is better quality. I've got a new camera. So we'll see. I'm just trying to be a voice in the darkness that is realistic, but trying to warn people against the grifters and sellouts that are going to try to divert a genuinely grassroots movement that's going on right now in order to line their own pockets and secure their own positions of power. So be on the lookout for that. Do what you can to help build the workers' movement, support labor unions, and support building a workers' party. Join DSA and Greens. Maybe based on the people you'll meet, other ideas will come from that, but that's where it's got to start. And if you're a little bit further to the left than people in those organizations, that's fine. There are plenty of people that are very, very ready for something new and are very talented at being able to logistically and charismatically in at least municipal settings get us to where we need to go. I mean, we saw that at least even in the right wing of DSA, they were able to get Zoran elected. He was still within the Democratic Party, though. That's the problem. he still passed the filtration mechanism of being enough of a piece of garbage that he was allowed to pass through. It was just DSA's endorsement went over the general Democratic Party consensus, but it's still ultimately passed they gave him the green light still. And yeah, elections are not enough, but we saw with that with how many was it like, I thought it was 100,000 volunteers, I think, at one point during his campaign. Imagine that being mobilized towards starting up you know, food banks and food distribution centers, just housing centers, harm reduction and medical centers. You could build up networks block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood of completely localized, self-contained services that are directly benefiting the people rather than just disembodied private institutions that don't really give that much of a shit about us. They just want our money. I mean, we're seeing with Home Depot and Target, they support ICE. You know? I mean, these are people that don't have any qualms about bad things happening to us. So we just need to keep resisting, and we need to realize who's on what side. That's really the most important part of this entire diatribe, is figure out who's on what side. And I just told you that everyone that is currently a member of this government, that's prominent. There are people that are working like government jobs that don't have anything to do with directly ruining people's lives. Let's give them a pass, and government services type work. But lawmakers, judges, just anyone deeply embedded in the legal system, people embedded in the prison industrial and military industrial, intelligence industrial complex, law enforcement, no, you are absolutely the problem. You are the thing that we need to overcome. And it's going to be done not just on behalf of the United States. This is not an exceptional place. This is a place that just happens to, through um, its very overpowered geographic location, avoiding mass destruction from uh, recent massive modern wars. It's also just happened to um, be in control of the petrodollar as really the only, like I said, intact major country at the end of World War II. And they already spent their chips. They already cashed their chips on that advantage. It's frankly embarrassing that this entire monstrosity, uh, masquerading as a country when it's really just US Inc. Nobody that represents it is worthy of salvation. We need to resist them. And we're just all going to need to accept that this current era of politics that we were getting comfortable with because it didn't require a lot of participation, those times are done. It is going to be a lot of individual participation in a broader democratic format that's going to be demanded of us if we don't want to just be completely dogpiled by fascism. But I am encouraged that people are standing up for themselves, for their neighbors, and I really hope that we can continue to press the word to get people to explore leftist political theory, communist political theory and actually resist and don't just reform a system that is literally killing us.